Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. I'd love to know. And if you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to like and subscribe. All right, let's jump in.
It had been 53 years since anyone had seen the Vengeance, the flagship of Earth's fleet that had disappeared into the dark reaches of space. The Federation had long given up hope of finding her. The ship wasn't just a vessel. It was a symbol of humanity's reach and ambition. They had sent the Vengeance beyond the known galaxy to explore the outermost edges of space, to discover worlds that no human had ever dreamed of. It was meant to be a bold statement, a testament to mankind's courage. Instead, it became a ghost story, whispered about in the halls of spaceports, a tale of warning that chilled even the bravest souls. Then the signal came. It wasn't clear at first. It was faint, broken, barely a whisper amid the static of deep space. Command dismissed it at first, assuming it was just a leftover echo from some other time, or perhaps the result of some unknown cosmic phenomenon. But when the signal pulsed again, a little clearer, a little stronger, they knew it was real. The Vengeance had returned. They sent out a scout ship, the Revenant, to investigate. It wasn't until Commander Elliot Darrow stepped onto the bridge of the ship that he realized just how far out of their league they were. The Vengeance wasn't the derelict wreck he'd been expecting. It wasn't rusted or abandoned. No, it was alive. The ship hummed with strange energy, the hull shimmering with patterns no human technology could explain. The weapons arrays, once a sleek and efficient design, were now twisted, evolved, like muscle fibers wrapped in alien alloys. Even the air around it felt different, as if the Vengeance was more than just a ship. It was something else. When the airlock opened, the crew expected to find nothing. Perhaps bodies, perhaps just empty halls. But they found something far worse. The crew wasn't dead. They were still aboard, still alive, but suspended in time. Their bodies seemed frozen, their eyes staring into nothingness. But every now and then, a twitch, a faint movement, like they were caught in a dream. They were alive, but not alive, locked in a moment that couldn't move forward. Darrow reached out to command, but something blocked the signal. Every time he moved more than a few kilometers from the ship, the signal scrambled, twisted, as if something was actively preventing them from communicating. There was something wrong with this ship, something far beyond anything Earth had encountered. The crew brought the Vengeance into orbit over Luna Base. They thought it would be safe there under Federation control. But that, Darrow would later realize, was their first mistake. Dr. Sophie Keller, a scientist assigned to study the ship, was the first to notice the anomalies. At first, she chalked it up to the strange materials in the ship's hull, the odd isotopes they had never seen before. But when she discovered traces of what could only be described as quantum entanglement, her reports took a darker turn. She theorized that the Vengeance had been modified, not just by human hands, but by something else, something that wasn't from Earth. Her report was met with skepticism at first. After all, how could humanity's most advanced warship have been altered by an unknown intelligence? But the more Sophie studied, the more she became convinced. She added one line to her report, and that line changed everything. "I believe the Vengeance was modified by an alien intelligence," she wrote. Within days, Luna Base was crawling with Federation officials, armed soldiers, top scientists, and operatives from the deepest, most secret divisions of the Federation. The ship was locked down. The crew members were put into cryostasis. No one was allowed near them, not without clearance from the highest authorities. But Kyle Wren, a brilliant young scientist, couldn't let it go. He wasn't like the others. Kyle didn't just see the Vengeance as a mystery to be solved. He saw it as an opportunity. He was drawn to the ship, to its strange energy, its unanswered questions. One night, against orders, Kyle slipped past the guards, through security systems, and into the heart of the Vengeance. He didn't know what he was looking for, only that he had to know. Inside, the ship seemed to welcome him. Doors that had been welded shut for years opened with a touch. The lights flickered on as if the Vengeance remembered him, as if it knew he was coming. He found his way to the heart of the ship, to a place that shouldn't have existed, a place not on any blueprints. It was there in the center of the ship that he found it, the core. It wasn't a machine. It wasn't even something made. It was grown. A pulsating black orb hovering in the middle of the chamber, surrounded by alien script that glowed with an unnatural light. The moment Kyle focused on it, the core spoke. Not with words, not with sound. It spoke directly to his mind, his thoughts, his emotions. It showed him a war far beyond the edges of known space. It showed him an ancient species, one that was vast, powerful, and terrified of what humanity might become. The core showed him how they had tried to erase humanity, how they had failed, and how the Vengeance had evolved, adapting to the threat. The core whispered one final message: humanity must prepare. They know you now, and they are coming. Kyle stumbled back from the core, his breath ragged. His mind reeled from the visions, from the knowledge that Earth was not alone, and worse, that it was marked for destruction. But as he tried to process what he had seen, he realized something else. It wasn't just a warning. The core wasn't just telling him about a threat. It was showing him the future, humanity's future. And in that future, humans weren't just surviving. They were fighting. They were evolving. They were becoming something the galaxy had never seen before, something that would change everything. Kyle didn't remember leaving the chamber. One moment he was staring at the core, trying to make sense of what he had just witnessed. The next, he was standing in the medical bay, his mind still spinning. His head throbbed with a dull pain, and security alarms were blaring in the distance. He could feel it. Whatever had happened, it was bigger than him. Bigger than anything he had ever known. A nurse screamed when she saw him. 2 guards burst into the room, weapons drawn, shouting for him to get down. Kyle didn't move. He couldn't. All he could do was stare blankly, the images of the future still fresh in his mind. His mouth was dry, and he whispered something he couldn't explain. The ship, it let me in. The guards dragged Kyle through the sterile halls of Luna Base, their hands tight on his arms, their eyes filled with suspicion and fear. He tried to make sense of what had happened, tried to explain, but no words could form right. Everything felt disjointed, like pieces of a puzzle that didn't quite fit together. The visions from the core were still swirling in his mind, distorting his perception of reality. Was it real? Was it just a hallucination? A product of his mind unraveling under the weight of something no human was meant to understand? His thoughts flickered back to the core, the black orb, the alien script, the war beyond the stars, the Valari, the ancient empire that viewed humanity not as a thriving race but as a threat. He remembered the fear that had flooded him when the core showed him the future. The destruction, the eradication, humanity reduced to nothing, crushed under the weight of powers far beyond their comprehension. As he was pushed into the isolation chamber, the door slamming shut behind him, Kyle's mind refused to settle. He collapsed onto the cot, his body exhausted but his mind still alert. The soft hum of the base's systems echoed around him, but it wasn't enough to drown out the ringing in his ears. The visions, the future, they kept replaying one after another. He could see the Valari ships, massive and silent, tearing through the fabric of space itself. He could feel the heat of dying stars, the crackling tension in the air as humanity fought for its survival. And then, there was the ship, the Vengeance. It was more than just a vessel. It was a living thing connected to the very future humanity was heading toward. The core, the pulsating black orb, wasn't just a power source. It was a guide, A teacher showing him the way. It wasn't trying to control him. It wasn't manipulating him. It was preparing him for something far greater than anything he could have imagined. Kyle didn't know what to do with this knowledge. He didn't know if he was ready to face it, let alone explain it to anyone else. What could he say? How could he tell them that the Vengeance, the ship that had been lost for decades, wasn't just an ancient relic of human ambition? How could he explain that it had been transformed, evolved by an alien intelligence, and that it was now a living weapon capable of bending the very fabric of reality? How could he tell them about the visions, the alien threat, the future of humanity itself? Kyle's thoughts were interrupted by a sharp, buzzing sound. He sat up, blinking, his eyes struggling to adjust to the dim light of the cell. The door to his isolation room slid open with a soft hiss, and Commander Darrow stepped in, his expression cold, hard. The commander's eyes flicked briefly to Kyle before locking onto the door control panel, which sealed shut behind him. "You've been a problem," Darrow said quietly, his voice low, but there was an edge to it. The kind of edge that only came when someone was dealing with a matter of utmost importance, something they didn't fully understand but were forced to handle anyway. Kyle remained silent, his body tensing as Darrow approached. The commander was the kind of man who saw things in black and white. No room for ambiguity, no tolerance for the unknown. But what had Kyle seen? What had he felt? He had experienced something that had cracked open the boundaries of his mind, something that couldn't be explained by science, logic, or reason. "You went into the Vengeance's core, didn't you?" Darrow continued, his tone still clipped. "You know that's a violation of protocol. You had no authorization to even approach it, and now we're dealing with a situation none of us can comprehend." Kyle swallowed hard. I wasn't looking for trouble," he murmured, his voice hoarse, his thoughts still a mess. He stopped, his words tangled in his mind. "It let me in. The ship, it chose me." Darrow's eyes narrowed. "You're not making sense, Ren. There is no choosing. The Vengeance is a weapon, a ship that we need to study, not interact with like some kind of sentient being." He took a step closer, his voice growing quieter, more urgent. "Do you understand what you're saying? That ship holds alien technology. We don't know what it can do. We don't know who—" He broke off, his eyes flickering to the ceiling as if considering the ramifications of what he was about to say. "We don't know who modified it, but we know it wasn't human. And now, it's alive." Kyle's heart raced. He wanted to tell Darrow the truth that the Vengeance wasn't just alive, it was waiting for something, for someone, for humanity, but how could he explain that? How could he make Darrow understand? "The Vengeance is evolving," Kyle said softly, his voice trembling. "It's not just a weapon. It's a key, a bridge to something more, something else. The core showed me the future. It showed me the war, the Valari. They're coming, Darrow. They're coming to wipe us out." Darrow's expression faltered for a split second, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. He took a deep breath, regaining his composure. "I've read the reports, Ren," Darrow said. "You're not the only one who's seen the Vengeance. We've all seen it. But we're not going to panic. The Federation won't let anything like that happen. You need to trust me." "Trust?" Kyle wanted to laugh. Trust the Federation? The same Federation that had buried the truth of humanity's future under layers of secrecy and fear? The same Federation that had ignored every warning sign, every red flag until it was almost too late? Kyle could feel his pulse quickening, the tension rising in his chest. "You don't get it, Darrow. You think you're in control, but you're not. The Vengeance, it's already changing everything. The core has already started altering the crew. It's trying to prepare us, to evolve us, so we can survive what's coming." Darrow's eyes darkened, and he shook his head. This is madness. The Federation can't afford to let a single ship threaten the balance of power. We have to control it. We have to understand it. Kyle's hand clenched into a fist. You don't understand, he whispered. You think we're fighting for survival, but we're already too late. The words hung in the air between them like a cold, heavy fog. Darrow opened his mouth to speak, but before he could say anything, the lights in the room flickered. A deep rumble shook the walls, vibrating through the floor beneath them. The vengeance was calling to him again. Kyle's eyes snapped toward the door. He could feel it, the pull, the connection, the awakening of something within him. He couldn't fight it anymore. The ship was no longer just a ship. It was part of him, and he was part of it. Before Darrow could react, Kyle bolted from the cot and headed for the door. It slid open before he even reached it. The ship, alive, aware, waiting, was calling him. There was no turning back now. The moment Kyle stepped out of the isolation chamber, the world around him seemed to shift. The corridor ahead flickered, the lights dimming and brightening in rhythm with his heartbeat. It was as if the very walls of Luna Base were alive, reacting to his presence. Every step he took felt heavier, as if the ship, the vengeance, was calling him, pulling him towards something he couldn't quite understand yet. The further Kyle moved, the more aware he became of the growing presence within him. The core's influence, subtle at first, was now unmistakable. It was as if his body and mind were syncing with the ship. The strange energy he had felt when he first touched the vengeance had intensified, spreading through his very cells, coursing through his veins. It wasn't just the ship's technology that was changing him. It was something deeper, something primal. He moved quickly down the dim hallway, his footsteps echoing louder than they should have been, as if everything in Luna Base had slowed down to match his pace. There was a growing sense of urgency building inside him. He needed to reach the ship. He needed to understand what was happening, what was about to happen. The walls were no longer just walls. They seemed to pulse with a strange life of their own. The metal had become organic, veins of some kind of alien material running through the structure. It almost looked like muscle, twitching and shifting with an unseen rhythm. Kyle's mind raced. The vengeance wasn't just a warship. It was something else entirely. It wasn't just made of metal and alloy. It was alive, a hybrid of organic and mechanical. It had become a creature, something ancient and beyond anything humanity could comprehend. Kyle's thoughts raced back to the core, the visions it had shown him, the war, the Valari. An empire so vast and ancient that humanity's existence was a mere flicker in their grand timeline. The core had shown him what they feared, what the Valari feared, humanity's potential. The core had revealed a terrifying truth. Humans were not just a race to be conquered or wiped out. They were an evolutionary threat, a species capable of bending the rules of the universe itself, capable of changing the fabric of reality with sheer willpower and ingenuity. The Valari had tried to erase humanity's future by tearing the vengeance out of time, but they had failed. The vengeance had adapted. It had absorbed their technology. It had evolved. And now humanity was at the threshold of that evolution. Kyle was at the center of it. He rounded a corner and found himself in the maintenance section of Luna Base. This area was barely used, forgotten in the everyday bustle of the station. The air here felt different, heavier, as if the atmosphere itself had thickened to match the growing intensity around him. The walls of the base were colder, the hum of the ship's systems more pronounced. He could feel the vibration under his skin, a deep, resonating pulse that was synchronized with his own heartbeat. He moved forward, instinctively knowing where to go. The vengeance was drawing him in, and no matter how hard he tried to resist, his body moved with a mind of its own. The security doors he passed slid open without a touch, as if recognizing him. The ship, alive, aware, was allowing him to pass, allowing him to come closer. The doors led him to a large docking bay, one that was normally locked down, reserved only for high-level access. But as he approached, the doors parted before him, revealing the Vengeance in all its unnatural glory. The ship stood in the center of the bay, a towering presence that seemed to pulse with power. It no longer looked like a traditional warship. It was a living entity, its hull rippling with strange, otherworldly patterns. The metallic surface was now intertwined with organic growths, twisting and shifting like veins beneath skin. The ship breathed. It was alive. Kyle could feel it in his very bones, its presence pressing against him, as if it recognized him, as if it was waiting for him. He stepped forward, his feet moving with purpose, drawn to the ship like a moth to a flame. As he reached the airlock, it opened without hesitation, allowing him entry. Inside, the corridors were even stranger than before. They were no longer made of the hard, cold metal he had expected. Instead, the walls were smooth, almost organic, with faintly glowing veins running through them, pulsating in time with the ship's heartbeat. The air was thick with the scent of ozone, and every step Kyle took seemed to cause the walls to shift, to react to him. It was as if the ship was responding to his presence, acknowledging him as a part of it. Kyle moved deeper into the Vengeance, his mind racing with questions. What was this ship? What had it become? And why had it chosen him? The answers, he knew, were locked within the heart of the ship, the core. He had to reach it. He had to understand it. Only then could he comprehend the gravity of the situation. The closer he got to the heart of the ship, the more the energy inside him intensified. His thoughts were no longer entirely his own. The ship, the Vengeance, was reaching into his mind, unlocking potential he didn't know he had. He could feel the ship's consciousness beginning to merge with his. It wasn't violent, it wasn't painful, it was like a resonance. A hum in the back of his mind that grew louder the closer he got to the core. His senses were expanding, becoming more attuned to the ship's presence. The ship wasn't just a machine anymore. It was a living, breathing entity, and somehow, Kyle was part of it. He arrived at the central chamber, the core chamber, and what he saw there took his breath away. The black orb that had haunted his mind since that first encounter with the ship was larger now, its surface shimmering with shifting patterns like oil moving on water. The alien script that surrounded it had become clearer, the symbols glowing with an ethereal light. The air around it felt charged, alive with raw energy. It was no longer just a power source. It was a mind. It was a consciousness, vast and incomprehensible, ancient and powerful. Kyle stepped closer to the core, feeling the overwhelming presence of the ship filling his mind. It wasn't just the core that was alive. The Vengeance itself was alive, connected to him. And through him, it was connected to humanity's future. He could feel the weight of everything, the burden of what he had learned, what the ship had revealed to him. He wasn't just an observer anymore. He was a participant in what was to come. The future was unfolding in his mind, and whether he was ready or not, there was no turning back. The core pulsed once, sending a ripple through the chamber. Kyle's heart raced as the visions flooded his mind again. The Valari, the war, the destruction, humanity's survival. He saw the death of worlds, the collapse of entire civilizations. But amidst the chaos, he saw something else. He saw humans, broken, battered, but still fighting, still surviving, still evolving. The core was showing him a path forward, a path that could lead to humanity's victory or its destruction. It was up to him now, up to what he chose to do with the knowledge and power the ship had given him. A voice, not human, not alien, echoed in his mind. It was the ship, the Vengeance. You are the bridge. The future must begin with you. Kyle closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the ship's words settle in his chest. The future of humanity was no longer something abstract. It was real. It was now, and he was the one who had to carry it forward. Kyle's hand trembled as he reached out, hovering just above the core. The energy in the room crackled, sharp and alive, as if the ship was aware of his hesitation. The presence around him seemed to pulse with anticipation, waiting for him to take the next step, to commit to what lay ahead. He had learned so much in such a short time, yet he still felt like a stranger within the ship, as though the true depth of its power and purpose was still beyond his grasp. But the voice, the ship's voice, kept echoing in his mind. "You are the bridge." Kyle let out a slow breath, his chest tight. What did that mean? The bridge. He wasn't sure he fully understood, but something inside him told him he didn't need to understand it all. Not yet. He had been chosen for a reason. Chosen by a ship that had evolved, that had witnessed humanity's potential and its destruction, that had survived against all odds, adapting with the power of alien technologies far beyond anything human civilization had ever created. The core pulsed again, this time more intensely. The glowing symbols on its surface shifted, rearranging themselves into new patterns. Kyle's vision blurred as his mind began to stretch out beyond the physical boundaries of the chamber. He was no longer just standing in the heart of the vengeance, he was everywhere. He could feel the ship's consciousness intertwining with his own, flooding his mind with images, thoughts, and feelings. It wasn't just the core that was speaking to him anymore. It was the ship itself, alive. Kyle staggered back, his heart pounding in his chest, but the ship's influence was too powerful to resist. It had already connected with him. His mind was no longer his own. It was part of something far greater. A vast network of knowledge and potential stretching across time and space. The Vengeance wasn't just a warship. It was a living archive, a vessel of evolution, a tool of survival in a universe that didn't care about humanity's existence. The ship had seen the future, humanity's future, and it had learned. It had adapted. Humanity is the problem, but it is also the solution. The voice reverberated in Kyle's mind again, this time more distinct, as though the ship were speaking directly into his soul. His hands shook, the magnitude of it all weighing on him. He saw visions again, blinding flashes of worlds burning, of civilizations being wiped out by the Valari ascendancy. But these weren't just images of destruction, they were moments of hope, of defiance. He saw humans battered and broken but resilient, fighting back with a ferocity that shook the foundations of the universe itself. They were winning, not by numbers, not by superior weaponry, but by sheer will, by their stubborn refusal to bow to the ancient empires that sought to erase them. And in the middle of it all, he saw himself. Kyle Ren, the bridge, the key. The core thrummed louder now, as if it was drawing Kyle deeper into its mysteries. The ship's resonance filled his mind, the flood of knowledge washing over him, unraveling his sense of self. For a moment, he couldn't tell where the ship ended and he began. Everything was one. The ship, the core, the future, the war. It was all part of a single, unbroken whole. They are coming, Kyle. The core's voice was softer now, more urgent. The Valari ascendancy knows of you. They know what you are becoming. The question is, will humanity evolve or will it perish? Kyle swallowed hard. The Vengeance had shown him the future, but it had also shown him a terrifying truth. Humanity was not the favored species in the galaxy. There were powers, ancient, vast, and unyielding, that would never allow humanity to rise to the heights it was capable of. The Valari had already tried to erase Earth's future once, and they would stop at nothing to do it again. The war had already begun. But it wasn't just the Valari that Kyle had to worry about. There were those within the Federation itself who feared the vengeance, feared what it represented. They had no understanding of the ship's potential, of what humanity could become if they embraced it. To them it was a weapon, a dangerous, unpredictable force that threatened to upset the delicate balance of power the Federation had spent centuries maintaining. And now, Kyle was at the center of it all. He was the one who could either lead humanity to its ascension or doom it to extinction. He had to make a choice that would shape the future of the human race. For a moment he closed his eyes, letting the flood of information wash over him, trying to clear his thoughts. It was so much. Too much. The weight of it all pressed down on him like 100 suns. His body trembled under the strain, but he could feel the vengeance, its pulse, its heartbeat, surrounding him, supporting him, urging him on. He opened his eyes, staring at the core. It glowed brightly now, its surface swirling with alien symbols, shifting and changing. It was waiting for him to act. He could feel its anticipation, its need. The ship wasn't just a tool, it was an entity, a part of something much greater. A force that had lived through the rise and fall of civilizations, watched the universe spin and collapse, and now it was choosing humanity. It was choosing him. Without thinking, Kyle took a step forward, his hand outstretched toward the core. As his fingers brushed against its surface, a flood of images exploded in his mind. The future, the war, the Valari. He saw humanity's cities burning, entire colonies collapsing into dust. But there was also something else, a glimmer of hope, a single burning light in the darkness. It was humanity's refusal to die, their creativity, their stubbornness, their will to survive no matter the cost. He didn't know how he knew it, but Kyle understood now. The vengeance wasn't just a ship, it was a seed, a catalyst for something greater. Something that would rise from the ashes of the old world and evolve into something the Valari couldn't even comprehend. But the road to that future wasn't going to be easy. The Valari would come, they would test humanity's resolve. And Kyle? He was the one who had to lead the charge. As his fingers made contact with the core, a violent pulse of energy surged through his body. His vision blurred, and he staggered back, his heart pounding in his chest. The core's energy was too much for him to fully comprehend, too much for any human mind to hold. But Kyle wasn't just any human anymore. Not after what the vengeance had shown him. Not after what he had become. He could feel it, the power, the change. It was in his blood now, coursing through him like fire. He had become part of the ship, part of its mission. And there was no turning back. The core hummed softly as if satisfied with his choice. Kyle looked up, his eyes now glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. The ship was waiting, but the galaxy? The galaxy was about to see what humanity was truly capable of. The ship's hum reverberated through Kyle's bones, a low, resonant sound that seemed to emanate from the core itself. He stood there, breathing heavily, his eyes flickering with the strange light now embedded within them. The vengeance was alive, and so was he. The bond between them had been forged, undeniable and irreversible. His mind stretched beyond the boundaries of the ship, grasping at fleeting fragments of future possibilities. He could feel it. He was no longer merely a part of the vengeance. He was a part of something greater. His thoughts fragmented as the core pulsed again, each beat drawing him deeper into its vast network of knowledge. He saw civilizations rise, crumbling in the blink of an eye, only to be replaced by others more resilient, more dangerous. He saw empires, alien ones, so ancient that their histories seemed to stretch out of time, their hands long reaching across galaxies. He saw them break the rules, create weapons of unimaginable power, and erase entire species in a single act of cosmic rage. And then, in the middle of it all, he saw the Vengeance, its hulking form moving through the chaos, a solitary force, capable of surviving where others had failed. But the Vengeance was more than just a survivor. It was a harbinger, a symbol of the future humanity could become if they dared to embrace the power within them. But that power came with a cost. The Valari Ascendancy, the ancient empire that feared humanity's potential, had already marked Earth for extinction. The Vengeance had fought back once, and now it was up to Kyle and his crew to face the oncoming storm. The light in his eyes flickered as the realization hit him. The Vengeance wasn't just a ship. It was humanity's last hope. If they were to survive, if they were to resist the Valari and whatever other empires came after them, it would all depend on the choices he made next. The Vengeance had been waiting for him, for this exact moment in time. His hand fell to his side as the ship responded to his thoughts. Its systems were aligning with his will, syncing perfectly with his instincts. The connection was overwhelming, yet it didn't frighten him. In fact, it felt almost comforting. The ship, the core, even the strange energy pulsing within his body, they weren't enemies. They weren't forces to be controlled or feared. They were allies. Together they would forge a new future for humanity. Kyle looked around the chamber, his gaze landing on the crew members that had awakened in the cryostasis chambers. The Vengeance had changed them as well. They weren't just the same people who had disappeared all those years ago. No. They had evolved, too. Their bodies were enhanced, laced with the same alien technology that now ran through the veins of the ship. They had become something more than human, just as he had. They were no longer just soldiers or scientists. They were warriors, beacons of a new era. Captain Ryan, the former commander of the Vengeance, now stood before him, his gaze unwavering. The captain had always been a man of discipline, of cold precision. But now, there was something else in his eyes, a knowledge, a deep understanding of what was to come. "It's begun," Ryan said, his voice low, carrying the weight of experience. "We've crossed the threshold, Kyle. The Valari are already aware of us. They've been watching." Kyle nodded, his mind racing. "I saw them," he replied, his voice shaking with the intensity of what he had witnessed. "I saw their ships, their power. They fear us. They fear humanity." Ryan's lips tightened, but he didn't speak. He didn't need to. Kyle could see the doubt in his eyes. Even now, even with all the power at their fingertips, the crew still wasn't sure if humanity had the strength to rise against an empire that had ruled for millennia. But Kyle didn't share their uncertainty. He felt something in his gut that told him humanity was ready. The Vengeance was ready. And the crew? They were ready too. They just didn't know it yet. The ship hummed again, its energy reverberating in the very air around them. Kyle reached out, extending his mind further into the ship. He wasn't just a passenger anymore. He was in control, not of the ship in the traditional sense, but of its essence, its purpose. The core pulsed in agreement, recognizing him as its equal, its partner in this war. Suddenly, the ship's external sensors flared to life, an urgent pulse echoing through the control room. The ship's main view screen flickered on, displaying the star system surrounding Luna Base. Kyle's pulse quickened as he watched the data streams unfold before him. The Valari were coming. The first wave had already entered the solar system. Huge, silent ships that seemed to fold in and out of space as though the laws of physics didn't apply to them. They were already too close. "Captain," Kyle said, his voice steady despite the rising tension. "They're here." Ryan's eyes flickered to the screen, then to Kyle. The expression on his face hardened. "Prepare the ship. We're going to need everything we have." Kyle's heart raced, but he didn't flinch. He knew that this wasn't just another battle. This was the beginning of humanity's fight for survival. They were no longer just defending their world. They were fighting for their future, for the right to exist in the galaxy as more than just prey. Ryan's voice broke through his thoughts. "Kyle," he said quietly, his tone softer now, almost a whisper. "We can't win this fight alone. We need the Federation. We need their fleets, their resources. We can't take on the Valari without help." Kyle's expression darkened. "You're wrong. The Federation has already shown us what they're willing to do. They'll abandon us the moment it looks like we can't win. We're alone in this, Captain." Ryan opened his mouth to argue, but Kyle's mind was already on a different path. The Vengeance had been waiting for this moment. The Federation was afraid of the ship, of the core, of the unknown, and so they would try to destroy it, or worse, control it. But Kyle Ren had already made his choice. The Vengeance was no longer just a ship. It was humanity's weapon, its last stand against an enemy that wouldn't hesitate to destroy them. The core pulsed again, sending ripples of energy through the ship, as if urging him to take the next step. He felt the weight of it in his chest, the burden of knowing that the future of every living being on Earth rested in his hands. He turned toward the control panel, his fingers moving quickly over the holographic displays. The ship responded instantly, its systems aligning with his thoughts. He wasn't just commanding a vessel. He was becoming the Vengeance. "The Federation will have to learn," Kyle whispered to himself. "They will have to learn that humanity is no longer a species to be controlled." The Vengeance rumbled beneath him, its internal systems activating with the sheer force of his will. It was time to make a statement. Outside the window, the Valari fleet grew ever closer. Kyle stood tall, his body glowing faintly with the strange energy that now ran through him, and he spoke the words he knew would change everything. "Let's show them who we really are."